So in this lesson, we are going to add and subtract with integers. So let's change this to say with integers. Now, don't get me wrong, we're going to use negative numbers, right? But we're also going to use positives. So integers would be positive numbers such as 1, 2, 3, like positive whole, so to speak, and negative numbers. Oops, almost forgot the negative sign. So in this first example, we have 4 plus negative 3. So we're going to add a negative. We're going to add a negative. So adding a negative, if we're adding a negative, negatives are like losing stuff. So if we're adding a negative, we are subtracting. This is just something you're going to do a lot and you'll get used to it. So you add a negative, but when you add a negative, it means you subtract. So when you add a negative, instead of plus negative, you're going to subtract. So instead of 4 plus negative 3, we are going to write 4 minus 3. So 4 plus negative 3 is really just 1, because 4 minus 3 is 1. Try it again. Example number 2. 1 plus negative 3. So we are adding a negative. We're adding a negative. Remember, when you add a negative, negative is a loss, like you're losing something. When you add a negative, we are subtracting. When we add a negative, we are subtracting. So this can be written as 1 minus 3. Now, if you need help with this, remember, based off the last lesson, you can, one, like a positive, so to speak, a negative, 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 0 pair, negative 2. So 1 plus negative 3 is actually negative 2. Remember, you don't have to show this part right here if you can already do it in your head, because I taught you the number line and the diagram, 0 pair, like methods. 2 minus positive 5. So we are subtracting a positive, subtracting a positive. Now this is different. So if you take away a positive, you can think about positive as like you have something. So if you're taking away a positive, you are actually just taking away, you're subtracting. So if we're taking away a positive, we subtract. So instead of 2 minus positive 3, we can write instead of 2 minus positive 5, you can write 2 minus 5. 2 minus 5. If you need to do this, then we can do it. You can do the number line 2 if you prefer. So 0 pair, 0, we end up with 3 negatives. So 2 minus positive 5 is a negative 3. Example number 4. We are taking away another positive. We are taking away another positive. So if we're taking away a positive, that means we subtract. Taking away a positive. So instead of 6 minus positive 4, 6 minus 4. 6 minus 4. That means that 6 minus positive 4, 6 minus positive 4 is really 6 minus 4, which is just 2. Now, just so you can look at these let's look at these for a second. So you see how this was a plus a negative, and this one was plus a negative, and this one was minus a positive, and the last one was minus positive. When these are different signs, different, they turn into subtraction. So when they are different signs, like plus a negative or minus a positive, then you subtract. Now let's see what happens when they are not different signs. So 3 minus negative 2. So we are taking away a negative. We are taking away a negative. But when, remember, like, you can also think about this as like the opposite. What's the opposite of losing 2? So it's really not, when you have taken away a negative, you're actually adding. You're actually adding. So instead of 3 minus negative 2, you can write 3 plus 2. That means 3 minus negative 2 is actually 5. So negative 5 minus negative 3. Once again, we are subtracting a negative. We are subtracting a negative, which means we are actually adding. So instead of negative 5 minus negative 3, we write negative 5 plus 3. If you need to do this, then we can. 1, 2, 3. So negative 1, positive 1, 0. 0. 0. So we end up with negative 2. So negative 5 minus negative 3 is negative 2. So let's look at this for a second. So when you add a negative, you subtract. When you add a negative, you subtract. They're different signs. When you subtract a positive, you subtract. When you subtract a positive, you subtract. They're different signs. So when you subtract a negative, you add. When you subtract a negative, you add. Those signs, those are both the same sign, like minus and negative, subtract a negative, subtract a negative. They're both minus, minus. Thank you.